local community leaders here have given estimates that would suggest that over 200,000 have been enslaved over a 20-year period.
The thought of human beings for sale moved me to taking action. As a filmmaker, I wanted to expose the atrocities and give a voice to those who have none.
The most shocking thing happened to me. A small child was slaughtered and the head severed from the body. The Arabs forced me to carry the head. For 5 days, I was forced to carry that head, even though it had started to decompose and produce a strong stench. On the 5th day, they told me to throw the head by the wayside and to set it on fire. Although I became a slave and worked night and day herding the master's cattle, I think that all the bodily pain and suffering was less heavy on my spirit than the carrying of the head of the dead child. My master was called Hassan Abdul Rahman from Lagawa. A lot of Dinka tribesmen have remained behind as slaves of the Arabs. I hope that those who brought us back to Dinka territory can also do something to bring them back to.
Today, there may be over 100,000 slaves in Sudan still in captivity, and more slaves are being captured from the Darfur genocide. Just like the genocide in Nazi Germany, many nations in the world refuse to acknowledge that slavery exists and therefore refuse to liberate them. These slaves have disappeared and remain hidden in the darkness.
Christian boys kidnapped from the villages are confined to an Islamic school where they are made to study the Arabic language and memorize the entire Quran. Rising for prayers before dawn and studying until the late hours of the night, they are indoctrinated into the strict teachings of the Islamic faith. Those who refuse to cooperate are beaten and chained until they improve their studies. Those who refuse to cooperate are beaten and chained until they improve their studies.
They must give up playing. Playing is harmful. It doesn't allow them time to study. Anyone who misbehaves, he's whipped so that he doesn't play anymore. When his colleagues see him being whipped, he will stop playing and become afraid. The Quran is difficult. If they do not work hard, they will not be able to memorize it all.
A lot of the footage that we have received from these nations, some in Sudan, show young boys being beaten, show them chained, walking down these dusty paths around the school compound with chains. In one school, they have to write on a small board that they carry with them Quranic verses, and then wash this board and drink the water. And their teachers tell them that drinking this water causes them or helps them to memorize this faster. And their teachers tell them that drinking this water causes them or helps them to memorize this faster.
Young girls have also been kidnapped and sold as concubines or given over to the sexual pleasures of the Islamic soldiers. Young girls have also been kidnapped and sold as concubines or given over to the sexual pleasures of the Islamic soldiers. Girls as young as 9 have been repeatedly violated. Tens of thousands of children have disappeared, hidden away by radical Muslims seeking to create a new generation void of any Christian faith. Christian men who refuse to submit to the Islamic movement have been imprisoned, beaten, and oftentimes mutilated. Others have been hung, nailed to trees, or drowned in the River Nile.
Here's the proof. So yeah, as you can see, this is how Islam is on the rise. This is what Islam is doing to black people, to Africans, to our people. So yeah, this is an African religion if you are forced into it. This is what's going on. You know, some Muslims will look at this and say, you know what, they just following their religion. They're just doing what their religion says is right. It's true. But the Quran also says that stars are missiles that God used to keep demons from getting into heaven. The Quran also says that the sperm is produced between the backbone and the rib. This is in the Quran. So, what? Is that true? Fuck no. Come on, man. Y'all gotta wake up. This is what they're doing to our people. This is what's going on. This is how this religion is on the rise. And this is the same tactics they were doing way back during pre-Islamic times to force people into Islam. They were forcing the Arabs into Islam, as I will show you. As you will see in this video, something about Islam you never knew, and had you known, you would not have joined. Okay, so this is where it gets good. This is where we get into the good part. We get into all the information because, as I've said, the Arabs were themselves forced into Islam. So what were the Arabs before they became Muslim? And that's something that a lot of Muslim scholars run from. They do not like to talk about the fact that the Arabs were Christians and Jews and pagans before Islam. And that's a well-documented fact. You have to realize that Islam is a fairly new religion as far as Christianity and Judaism goes. Paganism as well. It is new. It came in on the scene during recorded history when things were really being recorded and people were taking knowledge. They were acknowledging a lot of things that was going on around the world. So it's during recorded time. So it should be very easy to prove that this religion is real. It should be very easy to prove that Muhammad actually existed. And you should be able to find out the fact that the Arabs were Jews first. They were Christians first. They were pagans first. But nobody would speak to that because then you would have to explain what happened for them to convert. And the proof, the facts would have to show that they converted because of truth and not because of force. Okay, so we know that Judaism was around first. We know that Christianity came much later. The New Testament wasn't written until 400 years after the Old Testament. Now, the Syriac Orthodox Church of Antioch has the oldest surviving liturgy of Christianity. They have the liturgy of St. James the Apostle. Now, Syriac, of course, is the official language, both written and spoken, of that church. Now, if you look at the Bible, Acts 11:26 tells you that you'll find Christianity in Antioch. They tell you that's where it began. So where's Antioch? Antioch is in Syria, of course. But you can also find this church in Israel. You can find it in Lebanon. You can find it in Iraq. So it's in a lot of places that is today largely populated with a large Islamic presence. So what you have to find out is what happened. We can see that Christianity was there first, and we know that Judaism was before Christianity. So what happened to bring all this about? Because they would have you believe that these people just started off as Muslim. There was nothing before. And, you know, Muhammad came and the word spread, and these people was not another religion before they became Muslim. So it's making it seem like they wasn't that religion because they rejected it or because it's not true, which it's not. But they're not bringing up the fact that this was the practice of these people and that they switched religions back and forth like so many times for political purposes and, you know, just for a job sometimes. Because if you wanted to work for somebody who was Muslim and you was Christian, you had to switch, you know, just to get a job and feed your family. And that's the type of things that was taking place back then. Okay, now, a very important figure in Christianity is Nestorius. Now, Nestorius is basically responsible for creating a huge divide in Christianity during the Roman Empire. Now, Nestorius had different beliefs than what the Roman Empire wanted him to believe in. And when they threw him out, basically a lot of followers followed him when he left the Roman Empire. Now, with so many different beliefs in Christianity, so many people believe different things about Christ and about the religion than others. Nestorius didn't believe in the dual nature of Christ. He didn't believe that Christ was both divine and human. He only believed that Christ was just a man. Now, something that you need to know is they didn't call it Christianity back then. They called it the ism of whoever you follow. So if you follow Nestorius, it was called Nestorianism. So whoever you follow was basically the ism of that person. Christianity was created in Antioch, which is why Nestorius left Antioch, because he didn't go for the whole Christ divine thing. So Nestorius left Antioch and he fled to Persia, or basically, which is today Iran and basically Afghanistan. He fled there and started his ministry over because in 451, the Council of Chalcedon, it basically threw him out. Now, we know that at some point Nestorius went to Mesopotamia, which is basically Iraq, and he started his church there. And in Iraq, basically what was the Church of the East became the Church of Nestorius. Now, an interesting thing about the Church of the East, because when you start doing research on that, you find out a lot of things. Now, these are the nuns of the Church of the East. And if you look at the way they're dressed, you see way back then, they look like the Muslim garb of today. Now, even still today, these nuns dress the same exact way, but it's showing you that way before Islam came about, that these people, these Arab people, were dressing this way, they looked this way, and this thing was going on way before Islam came into play. Okay, so what is going to happen is you're going to start to see a comparison. You're going to start to see a comparison between early Christianity and Judaism and modern day Islam. You're going to start to see a lot of the phrases and terms and names that you know from the Quran and Islam. You're going to start to find them in early Christianity, Judaism. You're going to start finding a lot of these names and terms there. And the thing is, the definition and meaning you have from Islam is going to be completely different from what they originally was in Christianity. So basically, I'm telling you that these terms that you got in Islam, these names and stuff, originated from Christian sources, Christian origins. So what they basically did was take these names and terms, repurpose them, and give them a new identity in the Quran. So this is what you're going to see. And this whole subject leads me to the Lakhmids. Now, the Lakhmids basically had a military encampment in Iraq, which is basically South Central Iraq today. Now, the Lakhmids, basically, they are responsible for occupying what is known historically as the first Arab kingdom. And the whole thing about this is this place that they occupy is called Al-Hira. Now, that's important to note because Al-Hira is noted here as being in South Central Iraq. And it is said in the Quran that Muhammad got his visions in Hira Cave, which is in Mecca. So you don't find a Hira cave in Mecca during this time frame. The only Hira you find is the Lakhmid stronghold in South Central Iraq. Okay, so we know the Lakhmids were Christians. We know that Al-Hira was a Christian town because the Syriac Church of the East had a diocese there in the 5th and 11th century. Now, the 5th century being before Islam came into play. Now, the Quran says that Muhammad sought reclusion for oneness or closeness with Allah in the Hira caves, and he stayed there for several days waiting for a revelation. Now, as I've said, you don't find a Hira cave at that time, at the time of Muhammad, and not during the time before Muhammad. The only place you find a Hira cave is in South Central Iraq, which is far from Mecca. Now, as I've said, when you start digging into early Christianity in Iraq, you're going to find a lot of things that relates to Islam before Islam ever existed. Now, a place I got to note is Hadabaya. Now, if you start looking at these places and you start having trouble finding it, you just have to add an AL or take away an AL, because that's basically what they did to separate the early Christianity from Islam. So just like the Hira cave before was Al-Hira, they took away the AL and just left a Hira, and they put that in the Quran. Now, Hadabaya is now Al-Hadabaya. So it's basically a book out about Baghdad during the Caliphate era. And it's talking about a river near Baghdad or near Hadabaya called the Nar Isa. And it says, the northward into Hadabaya quarter. It is especially mentioned by early writers that the waters of the Nar Isa never filled, nor was its channel liable to become silted up. They describe it as flowing in a fine stream. Now, I'm going to stop right there because you're talking about Nar Isa. Nar Isa basically translates in Arabic to River Jesus, because Nara is river in Arabic, and of course Isa is Jesus' name in the Quran. So we got River Jesus. Now, why is this important? Because if you go to the Surah, if you go to Surah 1924, it's when Miriam is giving birth to Jesus. and she's in pain. She wants to die. And then she hears a voice from below her, and it says to her, the Lord has provided you beneath you a stream. The Lord has provided beneath you a stream. So what is it talking about? They're talking about the Nar Isa. They're talking about a place. One of the things you're going to see as we go along is most of the names that you are familiar with in the Quran corresponds to a specific place in Iraq or in the Middle East. So when you start to dig into this whole thing, you'll start to see that mostly Islam is a map.